The rifle everyone called a mistake. People like to believe that new things always win. When a big war begins, everyone expects modern weapons, fresh designs, and powerful machines that look like the future. That is why, when Britain entered the Second World War with a rifle design that came from the late 1800s, many experts laughed. Some were angry. Some were shocked. And many were sure Britain had made a terrible mistake. If you think an old rifle cannot survive a modern battlefield, stay with this story till the end. Because this weapon did something no one expected. In late 1939, Britain officially approved a new service rifle called the No. 4 Lee Enfield. On the surface, this sounded like progress. But when experts looked closely, they saw something disappointing. It was still a bolt-action rifle. A design where the soldier had to manually work the bolt after every shot. Even worse, most soldiers did not even get this new rifle at the start of the war. Instead, they carried the older short magazine Lee Enfield, a weapon that had already seen years of service. At the same time, other nations were moving forward. Germany marched into war with the Kar-98K, a strong and modern rifle built on the famous Mauser system. The United States went even further and gave its soldiers the semi-automatic M1 Garand. That rifle reloaded itself after every shot. The soldier only had to pull the trigger again. Compared to these weapons, the British rifle looked slow. It looked outdated. And to many people, it looked dangerous. Military thinkers across the world believed that the future of war belonged to fast-firing rifles. They believed that whoever could put more bullets downrange faster would win. A trained American soldier with a Garand could fire many aimed shots quickly. The rifle handled the hard work. It threw out the empty case, loaded the next round, and stayed ready. The Lee Enfield did none of this. After every shot, the British soldier had to lift the bolt, pull it back, push it forward, and lock it down. 4 clear movements. Every single time. On paper, it looked like wasted effort. Lost seconds. Lost lives. So why did Britain choose this rifle? The answer was not ignorance. British leaders were not blind to modern ideas. Years before the war, Britain tested semi-automatic rifles. Several designs were examined carefully. Some worked well in clean conditions but failed in dust and dirt. Others were too fragile for long use. But the biggest problem was not the rifles themselves. It was everything around them. Britain already had millions of Lee Enfield rifles. Billions of rounds of ammunition. Factories built for this system. Soldiers trained on it. Instructors who understood it deeply. Changing all of that while preparing for war risked chaos. Delays. Confusion. Broken supply lines. War was coming fast. There was no room for experiments that might fail. Still, critics were loud. Newspapers, experts, and foreign observers all repeated the same message. Britain was going into a modern war with yesterday's weapon. They said the battlefield would prove them right. When the war began, things looked bad for the Lee Enfield. Very few of the new No. 4 rifles existed. Production was slow. New factories had to be built. Old rifles were rushed back into service. To outsiders, it looked like proof of failure. But they were missing something important. They were judging the Lee Enfield as if it were just another bolt-action rifle. It was not. This rifle had been shaped by decades of combat, training, and refinement. It was not designed to win on paper. It was designed to win in the hands of trained soldiers. And soon, on real battlefields, it would show exactly what it could do. The speed no one expected. The biggest reason people hated the Lee Enfield was simple. They believed a bolt-action rifle could never be fast enough. To them, speed belonged only to semi-automatic weapons. They imagined British soldiers slowly working the bolt while enemy fire poured in. On paper, this idea made sense. But the battlefield does not care about paper. What critics failed to understand was that not all bolt-action rifles are the same. A bolt designed for real combat. Most rifles used by other armies followed the same basic system. The German Kar-98K and the American Springfield both used a long, heavy bolt movement. After firing, the shooter had to lift the bolt high, pull it far back, then push it forward and lock it again. This forced the shooter's head to lift from the stock and break focus on the target. The Lee Enfield worked differently. Its bolt required a much shorter movement. Instead of a wide motion, it used a quick, tight flick of the wrist. The shooter did not need to lift his head or shift his body. His eyes stayed on the sights. His cheek stayed on the stock. The rifle stayed on target. This single design choice changed everything. The bolt also worked on a system where effort was shared between opening and closing. This made the action smooth and less tiring. Over many shots, this mattered more than people realized. A tired soldier shoots slower and worse. The Lee-Enfield reduced that fatigue. British soldiers were trained to use this speed properly. They were taught to fire, work the bolt, and fire again as one smooth motion. Not rushed. Not wild. Controlled and fast. In skilled hands, the rifle became shockingly quick. Enemies expecting slow, spaced shots instead faced a steady stream of accurate fire. Many assumed they were facing automatic weapons. They were not. They were facing disciplined riflemen. This speed did not come from machinery. It came from design and training working together. 10 rounds that changed the fight. Speed alone is not enough if a rifle keeps running dry. This is where the Lee-Enfield gained another huge advantage. Most military rifles of the time carried only 5 rounds. After 5 shots, the soldier had to reload. That pause could be deadly. The Lee-Enfield carried 10. This was not a small difference. It was a battlefield advantage. British soldiers usually loaded their rifles using 2 5-round clips from the top. They did not swap magazines in the middle of a fight. But the result was the same. 10 shots before stopping. 10 chances to hit the enemy before any pause. This allowed British units to keep pressure on advancing forces. While enemies stopped to reload, British riflemen kept firing. This broke attacks, slowed advances, and caused confusion. More importantly, it created fear. Enemy soldiers could not easily count shots. They expected a pause after 5 rounds. It did not come. The fire kept going. This made attacks feel far more dangerous than expected. Combined with fast bolt work, the 10-round magazine turned the Lee-Enfield into something special. Not a machine gun, but something close enough to change how enemies reacted. British training made full use of this. Soldiers were taught to reload quickly and smoothly. Clips were kept ready. Movements were practiced until they became natural. This was not about panic fire. It was about control. A British rifleman was expected to hit his target. Every shot mattered. The rifle supported this mindset perfectly. When war spread across Europe, these features showed their value again and again. In early encounters, enemy forces struggled to understand what they were facing. Reports spoke of heavy fire from small units. Commanders believed they faced far more weapons than were actually present. British soldiers were not trained to fire fast only when scared. They were trained to fire fast on purpose, with control. Hitting the target mattered more than simply making noise. Every soldier was expected to know his rifle like a part of his own body. This training was strict. Soldiers practiced shooting again and again until working the bolt became automatic. They learned to keep their eyes on the target while cycling the action. They learned to reload smoothly without panic. Those who could not meet the standard failed. There were no excuses. This level of discipline created something dangerous on the battlefield. When war came, the British expeditionary force that crossed into Europe was made up of professional soldiers. Many had trained for years. They did not fire wildly. They fired calmly, quickly, and accurately. When they opened fire together, the effect was terrifying. One of the clearest early examples came when British forces faced advancing enemy troops in tight formations. The enemy expected slow rifle fire. They expected gaps between shots. Instead, they walked into a storm. Riflemen fired, worked the bolt, and fired again without lifting their heads. 10 rounds came fast. Then reload. Then 10 more. The sound and impact of this fire was so heavy that enemy officers believed they were facing many machine guns. But there were very few. The real firepower came from ordinary soldiers using their rifles exactly as they had been trained. Eyewitness accounts describe how attacks stopped almost instantly. Enemy soldiers fell in groups. Those who survived were shocked by the speed and accuracy of the fire. It did not match what they believed bolt-action rifles could do. This misunderstanding caused serious problems for enemy commanders. They overestimated British strength. They hesitated. They slowed down. In war, hesitation can be fatal. The Lee Enfield had already proven that it could deliver effects usually linked to automatic weapons. Not because it fired by itself, but because the men behind it knew how to use it fully. This pattern did not stop in Europe. As the war spread across the world, British and Commonwealth troops carried the Lee Enfield into deserts, mountains, forests, and jungles. In North Africa, the rifle handled heat and sand without failing. In cold and wet climates, it kept working. In muddy jungle fighting, it stayed reliable when many weapons struggled. The rifle earned trust. Soldiers believed in it. And that belief mattered. One story from the jungle fighting in Asia shows this better than any technical explanation ever could. A single rifleman held his position against repeated enemy attacks even after suffering terrible injuries. He refused to retreat. He continued firing with one hand, working the bolt again and again. He shouted to draw the enemy closer, not out of fear, but out of defiance. By the time the fighting ended, the ground in front of him told the story. The rifle had done its job. So had the man. This was not luck. It was training, courage, and a weapon that could survive extreme abuse. The Lee Enfield was not just fast. It was forgiving. Dirt, dust, rain, and rough handling did not stop it easily. Soldiers could focus on fighting instead of worrying about their rifle failing. Critics often talked about what the rifle lacked compared to newer designs. They ignored what it gave in return. Simplicity, strength, trust. British infantry doctrine also played a role. The rifle did not have to do everything alone. Light machine guns provided heavy fire. Riflemen supported movement, held ground, and punished attacks. The Lee Enfield fit perfectly into this system. While other armies chased pure technology, Britain built balance. A reliable rifle, trained soldiers, and clear roles on the battlefield. Most critics had claimed that bolt-action rifles were finished. They said they were slow, old, and useless against modern weapons. But on real battlefields, accuracy still decided who lived and who fell. A rifle that could place shots exactly where the soldier wanted still mattered deeply. The Lee Enfield showed this clearly. British factories did not build a separate sniper rifle from scratch. Instead, they tested standard rifles. The ones that showed exceptional accuracy were set aside. These rifles were carefully fitted with scopes and fine-tuned for precision work. The result was a sniper rifle that proved itself again and again. Snipers using this rifle could hit targets at long distances with confidence. The rifle held its zero. It did not lose accuracy easily. Even after rough handling, it continued to perform. This gave snipers trust, and trust allowed patience. Enemy soldiers quickly learned to fear unseen shots. A single well-placed bullet could stop movement, slow an advance, or break morale. Snipers armed with Lee Enfields controlled roads, open ground, and supply routes. They forced enemies to move carefully and slowly. The rifle's smooth bolt helped here too. A sniper could fire and work the bolt without disturbing his position. He stayed hidden. He stayed calm. The rifle supported his role perfectly. This accuracy was not limited to snipers. Ordinary infantry rifles were also capable of impressive precision. At longer distances, British riflemen could engage targets that others struggled to hit. This forced enemies to fight under constant pressure. The rifle also earned respect from those who faced it. Enemy forces did not treat captured Lee Enfields as junk. They kept them. They issued them where possible. They understood that this was a quality weapon, even if it did not fit their own systems. Captured rifles were often used for guard duty, security, and rear area defense. This alone says a lot. Armies do not issue weapons they do not trust. They especially do not issue weapons from the enemy unless those weapons are reliable. The respect went both ways. British soldiers also respected their enemies' weapons. But when it came to everyday fighting, many still preferred their own rifle. It felt right. It balanced well. It worked when needed most. The Lee Enfield was not perfect. No weapon is. But it did exactly what it was designed to do. It fired when the trigger was pulled. It fed rounds smoothly. It handled harsh conditions without complaint. As the war continued, newer weapons appeared. More automatic rifles. More complex designs. Some worked well. Others failed when conditions became rough. Complexity often brought weakness. The Lee Enfield stayed simple. And simple often survives longer. This reliability created confidence. Soldiers who trust their weapons fight better. They take positions knowing their rifle will not fail them. They hold ground longer. They aim more carefully. By now, the early criticism sounded distant. The rifle that was supposed to be outdated had become a proven tool of war. It had earned its place through blood, effort, and performance. The story was not finished yet. Even after the war, the Lee Enfield did not disappear. Many weapons fade away quickly once fighting ends. This one did not. It stayed in service. It was updated. It was trusted again and again. That kind of survival is not an accident. It is proof. And in the final part, the full verdict becomes clear. After the Second World War, many armies rushed to adopt newer rifles. Automatic fire was becoming common. Technology moved fast. On paper, the Lee Enfield no longer looked modern. Yet Britain did not abandon it immediately. Instead, it kept the rifle in service. Not out of habit, but because it still worked. The rifle continued to serve in different roles. Infantry units used it. Training units relied on it. Snipers trusted it. Some versions were even updated to fire newer ammunition. This alone says something important. Armies do not upgrade weapons they consider failures. Other nations followed the same path. Countries across the world adopted Lee Enfield rifles or kept using them long after the war. Some used them for decades. Police forces, reserve units, and paramilitary groups all relied on the same basic design. They trusted it because it was simple, strong, and easy to maintain. The rifle also became popular outside regular armies. Hunters respected it. Civilians admired it. It earned a reputation for accuracy and strength. Many rifles passed from one generation to another, still working as they always had. Total production numbers tell their own story. Millions upon millions of Lee Enfields were made. This was not because the rifle was cheap junk. It was because it met real needs across many countries and many years. Even former enemies respected it. Captured rifles were kept, not destroyed. They were used where possible. This is something no army does unless a weapon is worth keeping. So what about the critics? They were not completely wrong. They correctly saw that bolt-action rifles were slowly being replaced. Automatic and semi-automatic weapons would dominate the future. But where they failed was in understanding the present. They judged the rifle by theory, not by reality. They focused on what the Lee Enfield did not have. They ignored what it did extremely well. Speed through design. Control through training. Reliability through simplicity. Accuracy through balance. The Lee Enfield was not meant to win on paper. It was meant to win fights. In the hands of trained soldiers, it delivered firepower that shocked enemies. It held ground when attacks came. It worked in deserts, forests, cities, and jungles. It survived heat, cold, rain, and dirt. It stayed accurate when it mattered most. The rifle did not replace machine guns. It did not try to. It supported them. It fit perfectly into a system built on teamwork and discipline. That system worked. In the end, the Lee Enfield proved something larger than itself. War is not decided by technology alone. It is decided by how well weapons, people, and ideas fit together. This rifle fit. It served soldiers who defeated powerful enemies. It stood alongside weapons that shaped history. It earned a reputation not through words, but through results. What began as a weapon many called outdated became one of the most respected rifles ever carried into battle. Not because it was new, but because it was right. If you enjoyed this story and want more deep, honest looks at real history, show your support by liking the video, sharing it with people who love true war stories, and staying connected for more content that goes beyond surface facts and tells the full story.